Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is the second show of my new YouTube channel, Liberating Your Soul. Welcome back. If you're tuning in live, we may be live streaming this and watching from Facebook or LinkedIn. I just want to welcome you as well as on my YouTube channel, where we're here committed to helping women liberate their soul through grief recovery, addiction recovery, through all sorts of spiritual liberation, sexual liberation. And I'm really excited to have an amazing guest today who has a really powerful story that can give you a different perspective and some different tools on how you can liberate your soul. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Jill Sitnick, my sister from another mister on the East Coast. So excited to have you here today. Jill and I met through the psychedelics, aka plant medicine space, and she, much like me, did all of the right things, right? The talk therapy, the self-help, and she was having a high achieving career in her life, but she was definitely challenged, had her own PTSD diagnosis. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that later. And finally, what worked for her was MDMA assisted therapy. And Jill, I've never had anyone on my podcast or YouTube channel ever talk about MDMA. So thank you for being my trusted first expert on this topic. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you and share with us your story.
Oh my gosh, it's a privilege. Thrilled to be here. Hi, everybody. So my story, real fast. Terrible childhood, Generation X, never even understood trauma. Long-term relationship, over 20 years. He passed away. About a year and a half after he passed, I had a panic attack from a work email. If that's not the nerdiest story ever. I was working in big tech. I was at Microsoft. I got a ridiculous email about needing certifications. And when I say ridiculous, it was ridiculous that it made me spiral into a panic attack that for some reason, I was 1,000% sure I was going to fail these certifications. I was going to lose my job. I was going to lose my house. I was going to be living in my car. I could not get out of this spiral, even though my house was paid off. I was an A student. There wasn't a certification that I couldn't handle. I had another man in my life up here, knew that everything was fine, but my entire body felt like I was running a race with like a rucksack, and I was never going to win, that the universe was always going to beat me down. I went back to my therapist who had helped me with my grief work, talk therapy, Wellbutrin prescription, becoming increasingly suicidal, got the PTSD diagnosis, and very, very lucky. My therapist at the time was training to become a psychedelic assisted psychotherapist with a focus on MDMA. And she offered it to me. I said, no. Do you know who you're talking to? Like, I'm corporate girl. I don't mess with my brain. My brain is the only thing that got me away from my parents. What are you talking about? Well, at the time, this was my late 40s, the MAPS trials had already published their second clinical trial where, approximately 2/3 of the people didn't qualify for a PTSD diagnosis at the end of the 3 sessions. And that's what convinced me, trusting my therapist, the clinical data. And then, very long story short, 1 year for me, 3 therapeutic journeys with my therapist and guide, male and female. And at the end of that, I no longer qualified for that PTSD diagnosis, which meant I was no longer suicidal. I still had a lot of CPTSD to deal with and a lot of pattern breaking, but I was out of crisis by that point. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's so many people out there. I've been public about this. I was diagnosed after a 17-year emotionally abusive and spiritual psychosis related marriage. I got diagnosed with complex PTSD. So I've actually had on my previous channel, Carlos Tanner, and we talked about how the Ayahuasca Foundation and the Heroes Hearts that he worked with, 100% of the veterans who had that diagnosis, actually it was ancestral. So I'm just curious, I'm kind of like throwing you a curveball here. Did you connect back through your therapy, any of this coming from your ancestors?
The first 3 MDMA, no. They were strictly, my childhood was suicide, drugs, being thrown out of homes, food insecurity. So those 3 journeys were very much, we're dealing with that stuff. The 4th journey, actually with these 2 doctors, was psilocybin. And this was, I want to say, like 8 or 10 months after the end of that PTSD, diagnosis. And I went back, I was like, I got a lot of patterns. I still have a lot of fears. Like, I know I'm safe in the world in general, but I still had a lot of unreasonable fears. And that journey was the very first spiritual experience. It was psilocybin. And my grandmothers from both sides were there to learn how I was living, because I'm first in my line to have choice, to have any meaningful choice. And I remember being just so surprised that they kind of showed up. And of course, when you're in a psilocybin facilitated journey, my facilitators, they just go with it. And it was really just very interesting they kept saying, you're the tip of the spear. You're where we've been working towards. We're now following you. You're changing direction of this lineage. So I wasn't aware of it when I was going through the PTSD, hard childhood stuff. I had become more and more aware of it as that first psilocybin journey, and since then, other journeys where other relatives have popped up to give me a piece of their mind.
Oh yeah, I love that. As you know me, I actually just did a talk about how the ancestors are calling us all back to radical kindness in this timeline. And I love what you said. Yeah. You were the first one to have choice. Before we go on, I just want to acknowledge, I do see some people on the live. So if you're tuning in live, comment below #live, or if you catch this on the replay, #replay, where are you tuning in from? City, state, country. And if you want to, comment below with questions. I can't guarantee I'm going to field your questions. It just depends on how everything's flowing and going. But if you did have a question for Jill or myself, please tune in. So you were the first one with choice. And since this whole channel is about women liberating themselves, once you move past that first year and then maybe that psilocybin ceremony, how did you apply that choice? How did you be the change you wanted to see in your world?
Well, what's interesting? So big tech, I was 20 years in a school district. I'm an educator at heart. I went to big tech, still in the education field, both at Microsoft and Amazon. When I was able to leave big tech financially comfortable to do it, I was like, no, I need to advocate for this therapy. Because when it came out of that 3rd journey, there was a lot of really deep work done. And I just remember, because you don't remember a whole lot from the actual journeys, but I remember saying to my therapist and guide, I need to tell people about this, because corporate Jill is going to listen to another corporate Jill. Corporate Jill's not really going to listen, no offense to anybody, but like to the most stereotypical version of somebody who works with psychedelics. Yep. And my mother's life, she was clinically depressed her entire life. Obviously, both of my parents came from trauma. My mother's life specifically would have been dramatically different at this therapy if she'd even known it existed, if it had been around for her. And therefore, my life would have been dramatically different. So I've written some books. I've got a YouTube channel. We exchanged podcasts. I run the Psychedelic Scene podcast. I'm always talking to other people who are working in the healing space, because I think it's really important that, yeah, we've got the stigma of psychedelics. We can work through that. What's really important for folks to understand is that these particular substances can be very effective for a good portion of the population to help them with mental health struggles. I mean, the research is going on and on and on. And sometimes you just, to reach different populations, to reach the corporate Jill, I need another corporate Jill. So that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to advocate and kind of go out on a limb and talk about this stuff.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And because with MDMA, and well, I want to just loosely talk about what you and I talked about on when I was on your show about safety. You know, a lot of things and stigmas around psychedelics. I had the same thing because when I first came to the medicine, I was like, well, I've never done drugs, you know? And then, for better or for worse, as I shared with you on your show, I was surrounded by addicts of the medicine, even shaman and medicine women and people that were using it recreationally. Like, I didn't know half the time if they were sober or on medicine, just in general life, right? And so this is not something to be taken lightly, right? This is not something to be utilized recreationally. I think more so MDMA than even mushrooms. Would you agree?
I think it depends on your definition of recreation. I think MDMA specifically, and I have used it, if you want to define it as a recreation.
Yeah, let's define that.
Yeah.
I'd like your definition. Yeah.
I think my definition of recreational psychedelics is you're really just in there for the joyful experience. And so with that said, my boyfriend and I, we've used MDMA together as a bonding coupling experience. But am I a person who's going to go to a rave and take something when I don't have complete control of my environment? Absolutely not. So I think
Yeah.
there's recreational for enjoyment. And then I wonder if there's another word for it. Maybe just unsafe recreation without me
Yeah.
really thinking further. I do think you have to kind of delineate. I'm here for self-help therapy. I'm here for a bonding experience or for joy. And then there's a whole other category that, to be candid, if you don't know what you're taking, if you don't know who you're with, and you haven't done your own health screen, it's a whole other category that way too many people dip their toe into.
Yeah, yeah. And what I was getting at too is like you had PTSD and you were suicidal, and then you had a guide and a therapist, and you had a protocol long before you did it with your bonding partner, I'm guessing, right? So
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he is the same partner. Yeah, as a matter of fact,
yeah.
yeah.
So
I had
that's
scaffolding. I definitely had scaffolding around the experience.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the key, is just to really be safe. And if you have PTSD or if you have any other kind of medications or diagnoses, because it can go sideways really quickly, even if you're in a medicine space too.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There's way too many people. You and I both know this. There are way too many people who are very cavalier about what a client or a person is presenting with. You and I are not those people. My intake form is obnoxious. Hint to anybody who's listening: if you have a practitioner whose intake form is not obnoxious, it's kind of a red flag. But yeah, I had scaffolding, I had safety, I had 6 months of prep before the first journey.
Whoa, talk about that. I would love for you to share, if you can, just give us as much input as you can, as what did that 6 months look like?
Yeah, let me make sure I got my math right. I was diagnosed in March. We made the decision to move forward in March, and I didn't have that journey until September.
Yep.
So that's ish, right? English
Yep.
major, English major. My PTSD diagnosis, because of childhood trauma. My father was incredibly abusive physically and mentally. My mother attempted suicide multiple times. Going into that going into that first journey, for those months of prep, it was all about calming my nervous system down enough and trusting these two people. I already had an established relationship with my therapist, and she was female. She is still female. And my guide is male. It took that long on a weekly basis for me to trust my guide, who was a lovely human being. I'm taking a class with him right now. But it took me that long. And even the day of, I was still very nervous. And even the actual first journey was very abbreviated, because like my inner children were like, oh, no, there are no safe men. So there was a lot of prep about safety, a lot of prep about intentions, doing a lot of IFS-ish work. I say ish because I don't, the exiles and the protectors, none of that was, I didn't know any of that back then. I just knew we were doing some inner child work. With PTSD patients like ourselves, who have had very negative interactions with men, having a male guide there to do some reparenting is a juxtaposition. It's a bit of a challenge. You need a strong masculine a strong, safe masculine to help you, but your nervous system is like, those don't exist.
Yes. Wow. Wow.
For me, it took a really long time.
That's amazing. And just so our audience knows, I know what you meant by IFS, but can you explain what that is?
Internal family systems, Dr. Schwartz, go online. If you have come from, in my opinion, if you have come from traumatic childhood experiences, internal family systems is one of the easiest things to grasp in terms of how to work with your inner children, your different parts. I like to say, which inner child is driving the Jill bus today? Like, especially if I go out to some store and I want the Oreos. The 5-year-old is driving the bus, right? Because, 56-year-old Jill knows I shouldn't be doing the Oreos. The 5-year-old Jill is like, I want the Oreos. So who's like driving the bus? And so IFS, internal family systems, is a great way to help you identify when you are wanting something or a behavior. Wait a minute, who's driving the bus? And Dr. Schwartz is very, very generous. You can Google and get a whole bunch of his meditations.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And just so everyone knows, if you're tuning in live and, if you want to comment below with questions, hit the like and subscribe and share this with someone, especially if they have PTSD, they're looking into psychedelics, but they're not quite sure. Jill is very trusted with MDMA. I work with psilocybin, ayahuasca. Is there any other medicines that you work with in addition to MDMA? I'm just curious.
So I have facilitated psilocybin journeys. Personally, I've worked with practically everything except for ayahuasca. I actually might have the opportunity to work with Dr. Schwartz next year with ayahuasca. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to pan out. That would be really exciting if it did. So I've worked with them to understand how they deal with trauma. I facilitate very selectively MDMA and psilocybin, and I'm actively looking for a low dose 5 coursework, because I think low dose 5 can really move trauma for nervous systems that are dysregulated in a very kind, efficient way. So that'll probably be the third medicine that I'm going to be looking to really dive into for facilitation.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure that Jill's contact information and everything's in the show notes, including the IFS references. I really love that you shared the free meditations, because that's what the planet is having right now. We're all waking up to our childhood wounding, our past life wounding, our ancestral wounding. I'm curious, let's touch back on the PTSD and how you also, once you worked through that first year, what were still some of the complex PTSD symptoms that you navigated?
Oh my gosh. So I had broken up with that long-term partner. We had been together 5 years, broke up for a variety of reasons. I tried to start dating again. I find that I am attracting dismissive, avoidant men. And I kept saying, but I don't understand why this isn't working. It feels so right. I started to dig in. I stopped dating. I was like, okay, wait. Well, obviously something's wrong. It's me, And I stopped dating. And I basically went on a year of expansion. I said very purposely, not only do I want to learn about other psychedelic medicines and how they work with trauma, but clearly I have something going on. Long story short, after a year of traveling, going through my third wave psychedelic coaching program, learning to facilitate iboga, like having a tremendous amount of lovely experiences, I eventually got down to the abandonment of my mother attempting suicide with a shotgun when I was 5, which honestly I thought I had dealt with. I knew it wasn't my fault, The reality was, after she did that, there was no one in my family that knew how to comfort a child. I never cried. I literally saw my mother on the bathroom floor with a shotgun wound, and I never cried. And in one of my journeys, I had this horrible image of my grandmother just closing the door on a 5-year-old and me just in the hallway with not having anyone. And through the work, I realized, oh, wait, no, the family really did pick up. I was not in an orphanage. The family, different members popped up. I was loved, but that 5-year-old in that hallway had no idea. And so I grew up continuing in my father's abusive environment and my mother's really inability because of her depression to connect well. I grew up with the assumption that everyone's kind of far away and you can't expect kindness, and a nervous system that is very closed off is very comfortable to me. And so I had a lot of abandonment wounds to heal. And it was basically a year of really aggressively trying to dig and figure out. And I think that's part of the challenge, is that I didn't know where the origin of the issue was. I just knew I had an issue. I needed to have the stamina. I tell people this all the time because they think psychedelics are like the magic pill.
No.
Have the stamina to look at that symbolism and then really work through it and question it and actively change your perspective on things. So yeah, I had a pretty decent abandonment wound from mom doing that and the subsequent family not understanding how to comfort a child. A lot of forgiveness on my end. They did the best they could. I was fed, I was clothed, I was housed. That's all they knew how to do, and they did it.
Yeah, that's amazing. You and I have so much in common. I think I told you one of my psychedelic somatic therapies with ketamine, I was able to disentangle the suicide attempt of my mother that she did 5 years before I was even born. She drove her car into a moving train. I wasn't even born yet, and she had already attempted to abandon me, and everyone. So I had that deep abandonment wound in utero already because of, what had happened even prior to. So I'm curious with that abandonment, let's go a little bit deeper, because you talked about your grandmothers coming in and, I think we all know our ancestral roots, our root chakra, everything's getting activated right now because of what's happening out there on the planet. And it's happening for us, by us, I believe, by our ancestors. They're saying, all right, kids, let's wake up. It's time. Let's go. We gotta wake this planet up and birth a new one. So beyond your mom into your grandmothers, what were their abandonment issues? Did you have any experiences with that?
I think a telltale sign that there is generational trauma is if you don't know a lot about your mother or grandmother or great grandmother's life. I can tell you, my mother never talked about her childhood. I didn't actually meet my grandmother I'm sorry, I met her when I was a child. She died when I was 4. My father's mother never had a conversation with me about her childhood. So a lot of what I've learned, ironically, and I say learned loosely, it's more of a feeling, is that the women in my lineage, not well educated, unfortunately, not a lot of opportunities, not a lot of money. And I know on both sides, one's addiction. One side there was alcoholism, the other side there was gambling. One of my mother's funniest stories is that she never knew when she came home if there was going to be furniture in the house, if her father had gambled it away. And while that might sound cute and funny to a child or to a parent, never knowing what the husband's going to do, that does not create a safe environment. So everything I've kind of pieced together, but I throw that out to your audience. If you don't know a lot about the background of your family, it might be time to dig, because there's a reason why you don't know. There's a reason why you don't have that history. It was miserable for them.
Yeah, history keeps repeating itself, everyone, because we are ancestors and we've been surrounded by this patriarchal facade of, you got to be a good girl, you got to wear the mask. And if you're doing that from an unsafe, ungrounded space, you're going to keep attracting the same partner, different name, the same shitty job, the same friend who abuses you, all of these players that show up in our life, in our movie, as some people like to call this as a movie, or some people call it a game or a holographic matrix, whatever. Right. At the end of the day, all the answers lie within. So I'm curious, what is and I love that you said this is not a magic pill or quick fix, right? Because it's a daily journey, your daily habits, your daily transformation, your daily working with your parts for you to even know what 5-year-old Jill that wanted the Oreos, right? You had to have raised your consciousness daily to be even aware that it was 5-year-old Jill. So what is your daily practice like? How did you take the medicine ahead into your daily life?
Well, you know, I got that question so much early on. Like, Jill, okay, I get it. You take MDMA, and then what do you do? And I've had to break it down. English teacher. I was an English teacher, so everybody get ready to English teacher. I've broken it down. It's the pause framework, PAUSE. And it's all about, for me, I'm not a good meditator. I'm not. So for me, it was more like when I had a behavior that I knew I was having a 10 reaction and it should have been a 2, or I didn't like my behavior. Like, why am I really being triggered by this person? You know, this person has no power over me, but this person is really getting under my skin. So I took those opportunities, pause, you know, just don't try to escape this discomfort, allow it, figure out where it is in my body, uncover it, sit with it. And when I uncovered it, usually it was a childhood memory. You know, it was that 16-year-old getting slapped by her mother being thrown out. It was the 10-year-old being thrown out of my father's house. It was the 3-year-old being beaten. Like, uncovering meant, what memory is going to pop up? Sit with that inner child, sit with that memory, and give it the care, extend the care that it needs. And this is very much a loose IFS kind of model, because what I do with my clients and what my doctors told me to do, my doctors are like, you are a superhero when you're doing this. If little Jill needs to fly out of her house and go to the beach, if little Jill needs to suddenly be on stage to be seen, do it. The extend care, your imagination, it's just whatever your imagination wants you to do, right? There's no limits in your imagination. And so I still do that. I literally do that. Like, that practice when something's bothering me. I got very activated the other day. I was in traffic. I got super activated. Well, you know what? I had a car accident when I was 17. That 17-year-old was kind of freaking out. Had to extend her care. We had to stop. So it's something I do. I learned to do it in my therapy. I do it all the time. And that's what I kind of like teach it to my clients. It's repeatable. You can do it wherever you are. And it's kind of like, you know, the whole goal is that you should never really be forever dependent upon a therapist or a coach. You should walk away with a skill set that you can actively work through things. And I believe that strongly because my doctors gave me that. So I just had to kind of break it down into the English major acronym for me to look at it. I feel so silly about it, but it really works because like my clients are like, oh, I get it. So that's how I continue to do my work. But if you're like a meditator and that's what works for you, totally cool. I'm just like a D- meditator.
Oh gosh, no. I love that you said that, because here's the thing, the lie out there. It's what we learned from religion and school, right? You go to church, you go to school, and you have to learn the same shit everybody else does, and you have to believe in it, and you have to whatever, follow the rules, right? And so what works for you won't work for me, what works for him won't work for her. And we all got to, I was even a meditator when I hit rock bottom, because I actually used meditation to numb out and to bypass the shadow work. So I teach my clients a daily 5-minute shadow alchemy meditation to coexist with the anger, the frustration, the bitterness, the disappointment, the shame, the guilt, the fear, whatever the name of it is. So then they can bring it into the light and tame it and own it and bring in love. And so that's the feminine and the masculine coming together to assimilate it and integrate it into your central nervous system and embody it. So same thing for me. I might have started with meditation, and I do sometimes just sit and observe my thoughts. I could call that meditation. However, it's what you do and how you embody and be with those thoughts that's the game changer.
I agree. And you know what? It's really interesting. My English major mind needs the pause. Your spiritual mind needs that. I mean, really, we're kind of talking the same steps. We're just labeling them differently. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think what's really, really cool, because some people really gravitate to like some people, the left brain people like me.
Well, like you said, the corporate Jill. Yes.
The corporate Jill. And then the more spiritual folks are going to align with, oh, what she just said. And I think it's really important. You said the most crucial thing. You can watch your thoughts all day. If you want your behavior to change or your outlook to change, you need to put some work in to change the perspective. That's that missing piece that I think a lot of facilitators, they just depend too much on the medicine and they don't emphasize the importance of integration enough.
Thank you. Yeah, you and I, you know how passionate I am about that. So I love that you provide integration. As we start to wrap it up, and before I make some announcements and things, what haven't you shared with the the audience, knowing that this is a women watching, they're all about soul liberation. What other advice or thoughts do you want to share from your heart today?
I think trust your gut when you know something's off. I'm going to link this not only to the childhood trauma stuff. What I'll say is any behavior that really should be a 2, but you're reacting like a 10 and you don't want it. And I'm going to extend it to even the menopause hormonal stuff that we have to kind of fight for right now. Unfortunately, I'm 56. I've had to go get my own testing done. I've had to walk in with papers. I've had to fight for what I consider to be basic health care from a feminine perspective. So the same kind of fight, tenacity, grit, stamina that women are experiencing as they are kind of owning the fact that, hey, that study from 20 years ago lied to all of us about hormones. Let me figure this out, is the same kind of grit, stamina, focus. If you're going to use medicine to work on yourself, you could choose to stay in talk therapy for 10 years, or you can choose to go the medicine path and in 2 years accomplish a lot, but it's going to be bumpy. So you really have to have the stamina. So the effort that you're taking, hopefully with your hormones, is the same kind of effort you have to take if you're going to do medicine. But the payoff is tremendous. So I hope women listening know that they have some choices out there in terms of how they want to direct the rest of their lives.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that, because even in the medicine space, women need to advocate more. I just heard of another friend in the medicine space, a woman who got traumatically injured inside of a plant medicine ceremony.
Oh.
And so you know how that happened for me. And when you trust these people, and I wasn't listening to my gut because there were signs, right? She probably had the same thought, but we didn't trust our gut. So as women in the space, be very, very careful. Like she said, she took 6 months of preparation before she actually went into a healing medicine experience. So you want to get to know your practitioners. You want to possibly get testimonials and referrals. You want to hear, how are they living their life? How are they applying it? And how has their life, oh, by the way, changed? So these are just some other quick, you made me think of some really good stuff. So thank you for sharing that.
Safe stuff. Yes. Don't let the consumer decision making go out the window just because you're dealing with medicine and the urgency that you might feel to feel better.
Yeah.
It is a purchasing decision at the end of the day. I know nobody wants to say it that way, but it's a decision you're making. It's an exchange of energy, exchange of funds, and a service. Make sure the person you're working with or people you're working with are worthy of the service that they are offering you, because many are not. Many are, but many are not.
Yeah, there's a lot of how do I want to say it? Energy vampires out there, even in like going to a church or a spiritual community, or hell, even a grocery store. You want to feel safe. You want to, trust and tune into your body when you're going into the building, even, and just making sure, is this the right space for me? Even if you're not buying something, it's just all the things that you and I have learned.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen to that inner voice, or that tingle, the tingle in the back of the neck. Listen to it, ladies.
Beautiful. Before I ask you one final question and before we close, I just want to make some quick announcements for everyone as we head into Father's Day weekend, solstice weekend. Holy shit, there's just a lot of energy on the planet, everybody. This next 6 months, buckle up. These next 2 weeks are massive, massive. This new moon kicked my ass. I had so much come up for me that I've been alchemizing and purging and working through, and I'm seeing it. I'm in the front lines and the trenches every day. And so next week, and actually starting this weekend, Father's Day, I have an in-person yoga class for healing the father wound and honoring the solstice. That's a Sunday at 8:30 in Bloomington, Minnesota. Then next week, Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a father wound healing webinar, how to heal that masculine father wound. And even if you had a great father, I can guarantee you have a patriarchal connection to what's happening on the planet. So you may have been hurt by a perpetrator, you may have been hurt by a man and a caregiver, or even your ex-husband or a partner. It's all related. So just a PSA on that. So that's next week, Wednesday, the 24th. And then on the 26th, I have a Yoni Steam circle to help with healing and working through overall well-being. So check it out. I even have a Sacred Rage class coming up in July. Go to magdalenagrace.com for all of the updates, the calendar of events, and of course, to find my new YouTube channel, Liberating Your Soul. So Jill, it's been such a pleasure, such a gift. Where do people find you? How do they reach out to you? And I'll make sure I put that in the show notes.
Super easy. The Journey Sage. Again, educator roots. I started all of this with advocacy in mind and helping people. So the teacher of the Journey Sage.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough. I'm so glad that you got to be here today. And I'll also drop the show, the interview. Jill did an amazing interview with me on her show that was just released. So you can watch and get some more good magic about psychedelics again. And until next time, everyone, again, please hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell. Maybe share this show with someone, a woman who, may be struggling right now that could use an uplifting, inspirational message. Like Jill's story is just amazing and incredible. Until next time, here's to your best liberation of your soul. Know that you are loved, you are safe, and we're here for you. Bye-bye for now.